Alright, well, let's get started here. Up to over 40 folks, so that's pretty good. Again, my name is James Herzing. I'm the Fusion 360 Community Manager here at Autodesk. So what does this mean? Pretty much the person that you can go to with any of your problems and yell at me for why it's not working well for you, or if you have ideas to make the product better, or if you just want someone to chat with. I'm more than happy to fill any of those roles. So feel free to reach out to me either at Twitter, as you can see there below, or by emailing me, and I have my email address coming up later, with anything Fusion related that you want. And with me today is another James. James, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I am the other James. How's everybody doing? My name is James Alday.
James is one of our outstanding community members, and it's kind of exciting because our class today, 3D Printing with Fusion 360, is the first customer-led webinar that we're going to be doing. We have another 3 coming up in the next month or so from other customers, so this is really exciting to see the way that real users are out there using the product and doing something a little bit different, modeling specifically for 3D printing. So we're going to see a lot of great stuff here today. So this is a somewhat interactive session, so anytime that you have a question about what's going on the screen or anything in general, you can feel free to type it in the little questions box, which is usually over to the right of your screen, and I'll try and get you the answer quickly, and if it's something good for everyone on the webinar to hear, I'll go ahead and interrupt James rudely and say, hey, can you go over that again? Or potentially, hey, could you answer this question? So feel free to type away in the questions area and we'll get back to you as quickly as possible. To answer the question number 1 that everyone will ask, yes, this is being recorded and will be on YouTube for you to watch at a later time. In case you miss a step or you forget what happened, you can definitely go and review that. And any questions that you don't get answered or that you might come up with later, please feel free to email me at the address below, and I'll hopefully get back to you quickly. So what are we going to do today? So it is a class on 3D printing, and we're actually doing a dual material 3D print, which I've actually never done successfully myself, but James here has gotten a lot of practice at it. So a lot of the things that we're going to be looking at are, I'm not going to say difficult to use, but they're some of the more advanced features that someone might be using inside of Fusion. So other than sketching like we would normally do to create something, we're going to be using the Revolve command to create that geometry, the split and combine commands to make some of those cool shapes that you can see in the images to the right. They talk about the differences between bodies and components, things like that, and of course exporting as an STL file, which will be necessary for your 3D print. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and try and figure out how to make James a presenter. There we go. And he is going to go and do all of the dirty work here and get things moving.
All right, no pressure at all.
No, so
right, again,
somewhere up there, there's a share your screen button, and you should be good to go. There we go, I see it.
Yep. All right, perfect. Does it look okay? Everybody see everything?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you, James, other James, for letting me be here today. I think it's really cool. Your presentations and tutorials I've found very helpful throughout the years. So basically, I wanted to introduce a little bit about myself. My name is James Alday, again, with Immersed in 3D. I've been 3D printing now for about 1.5 years. I was introduced to Fusion 360 probably about 1 year ago. Throughout my journey, I played with a lot of 3D programs and 3D tools, and this one by far has definitely kept my interest. So I thought I'd show you guys some cool tricks, and maybe you guys can make some cool models that I can print in my garage. So basically, what I found recently is there's been a lot of interest in dual color models, dual material, dual color. And there's not a lot of stuff out there. So I was wanting to show you guys if I can figure this out. Bear with me. Like on Thingiverse, I don't know if you guys have done a lot of 3D printing, but you see there's a lot of 3D models currently available. but not nearly as much as a single color. And there's a lot of new dual color extruders coming out, and there seems to be a lot of interest, but just not a lot of models. And Fusion makes this really easy. So basically, I'm just going to show you guys how we can make some cool stuff, split them up into separate parts, and we'll go from there. Also, along the way, I have a lot of cool models to show you, and there was some stuff here. Let me see if I can find it. For example, if you guys have really large prints, if you're not interested in dual color, definitely stick around because I show you how to use Fusion to break up models that are really large. This was a 4-foot bow that I made. We can break it up using the same technique I'm going to show you today. So let's get started. Now, if I'm moving too fast, definitely, type out, and you guys can slow me down. We can go back and try it again. So basically, we're going to build 2-color vase. This can be 2 colors, 2 materials. It's going to be composed of 2 STLs that we're going to export that look like this. And from this, you'd put it into your slicer, and you'd have a dual color print. Very simple design. I know this is another vase. People are like, oh, not another vase, but trust me, it's all about the technique in building this, and you guys can use these techniques to build whatever you want. So let's get started. Let me actually start with a new design. That might be better. I'll just follow along with you guys. So what I usually do, and this isn't necessary, but when I was first starting out with Fusion, I'd like to just draw my work area, my printer bed. Again, not necessary, but this might help you guys out later. So my current printer bed is 200 by 200, which is an 8-inch printer. So this will just give you a good idea of the area you're working with so you don't get too crazy. And if you don't want this, you can always turn the sketch off. Not a big deal. So let's hide some of this stuff so I can see. All right, so we're going to start out really simple. Go to our front view. And then what we're going to do is sketch out the vase. So we're going to make something that looks like this. This is the goal of the first step, is to simply sketch out a profile of our vase. So to do that, again, go to the front view. We're going to click on Sketch. We're going to select the line tool, and we're going to click on this work plane. Now that we can draw lines, we're going to start at our center origin and go up about 150 millimeters should be good. Since our print bed is 200, 150 should be good. And again, you guys don't have to go exactly with these measurements. You don't even have to make the exact same looking vase because the whole goal of this is to split it and make dual model at the end. So you don't have to follow along exactly. All right, so we're going to go over about, I think I said about 30, somewhere in that area. Should be fine. And then we're going to stop. We're stopping because I need a spline. So now we're going to click back on our sketch. Click at the top, which I lost my line. See, I'm already making mistakes. You know what, let's do it this way. We can go back to spline. If you guys already drew the line, you can continue on the line. If not, we're going to draw straight out. And if we double click, we can start at this spot. So now we're going to do a vase, come down to, we're going to double click. Okay. So we have a really ugly looking sketch here that doesn't look like a vase at all, but it's fine because we can just move stuff around. So we're kind of close to what I initially wanted to make, which was this design. So does everybody pretty much know how to just sketch out basic shapes? Is everybody following along okay?
No questions so far, so I think you're doing it right.
Yeah, pretty easy.
Okay,
so
good. I'm just going to throw this out there, James. That double click to start at the new point, that's the kind of stuff people log in for. That's awesome.
Yeah, let me go over that. So you don't always, let's draw something out here. You don't always have to switch between the line and the sketch. I always just basically stay with the spline. I'm sorry, with the spline and the line. So if you're drawing something like a half circle, whatever, and you want a straight line, you can just double click, draw the straight line, double click again, and then start over. That way you don't have to keep switching between your line and the spline tool. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so let's get rid of that. We don't need that. We'll just hide it. Okay. So now, we have a vase. There's tons of ways we can make a vase. What we're going to do today is just use the Revolve tool. So to use the Revolve, first of all, you shouldn't be in render mode. We're in model mode. Here's the Revolve, or here's our sketch we made. We're going to go to Create, Revolve. It's going to ask us to select our profile. We're going to select the vase, or the sketch plane. It's going to ask us for our axis. The axis can be any straight line. So in this situation, we're going to choose the line in the middle. We're revolving 360 degrees in one direction, 360 degrees, and we're creating a new body. We have a couple options in here which we can go over later: intersect, cut, and join. These are all awesome, but we're going to start with new body for now. My bodies are off so you can't see it. And what we're left with is a basic vase. So to get a basic vase shape like this, we could do the Revolve tool, like I said, or there's a couple different alternate ways we could do it. We could do a bunch of sketch planes. This part of the tutorial I'm going to go through really quickly because I didn't want to spend a lot of time. Basically with Fusion, you have tons of options to do a basic shape. There's a lot of different ways you can approach it, which is cool because each one has their advantages and disadvantages. So we just showed you the Revolve. This way is the loft. There's a couple great tutorials out there that show you guys how to do lofts. Basically, you're going to do all your sketch planes. Once you get them all sketched out, I'll go over these construction things in a minute. So you're going to make these sketch planes. Go to Create, Loft. Let's actually start with this one. So when you select all the planes, it'll make the vase. Very cool, because when you're done with this, you can also change the shape very easily. So that's a second way to create just the basic shape of the vase. Another way we could do it is to create a sculpt, which basically, let me hide this body first. To create a sculpt feature, this is really easy. Let me start over actually. To get this design, we can go to Sculpt Mode, create a cylinder. Again, I'm going really fast through these because it wasn't really part of the tutorial, but I still think it's great for you guys just to see how many different options there are to build shapes. So we have a basic cylinder. Then from this, much like the lofts, I can just go through and shape it the way I want. Then we have a couple different options for closing these tops up. There's a vase tutorial, or not a vase, a lamp tutorial you guys done recently. That's really good at showing you guys how to close these gaps up. And if you guys are interested, maybe at the end I can show you how to do that. So anyway, that was just basically how we can get different shapes. Now going back to our presentation. Okay, so we have a basic vase. To turn this into a vase, it's really easy. We can click on the top of the surface. We either right-click and go to Shell, or I believe it's in Modify, we can go to Shell. So we'll right-click on the surface after we select it, go to Shell. So it asks us to select our faces or bodies, which we already did. And the thickness. Basically with 3D printing, thickness is very important because your nozzle size. Most 3D printers use a 0.4 nozzle. So you figure if we did 0.4 in here and we try to print it, it's only going to do one perimeter, which could be bad if we have some real strong angles in here. It might not be able to build on itself. So typically you want, you know, two or three lines drawn. So you have to multiply that. So I would say usually one's pretty good. You can squeeze 2 or 3 out of that, depending on your slicer settings. Say OK, and then we are left with a very basic vase. Simple enough. I think if you guys are here, everybody knows how to do this for the most part. So now you have a printer with 2 extruders. You just built this cool model, and you're like, okay, what can I do to this to make it dual color? Typically in the past, we would print this out, pause the print, switch our filament, and then we would be left with color changes in a horizontal pattern. So I thought it would be cool if we could maybe make the color changes diagonal or some decorative pattern or inlay text or shapes, which is exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to make it look like this without that ugly part in the middle. Okay, so to split this up, again, when you split models, it doesn't necessarily have to be for dual extrusion. It could be because this vase or this model you have is 4 foot long and you want to cut it up into 200 millimeter sections. So to split it, we have a couple different options. What I like to do, here's our split options, which are in the modify dropdown. To use these, you can see the red, it won't let me go there. You can see the red tool it's using. Basically, it's going to want us to select a tool. Well, currently, we don't have a tool set up. So we're going to build one real quick. So we're going to build a tool that will give us just a cool shape. I like using, in the Sculpt environment, there's 2 ways to get into Sculpt. You can either drop down into the Sculpt, or you can just select Create Form, which will automatically put you in the Sculpt environment. It's really quiet out there. Everybody doing all right?
So far, so good.
Great. All right, so getting creative, making kind of cool looking cutting tools. Sculpt environment's definitely where you want to be. Sculpt gives you tons of really cool features. You can, you know, shape organic shapes, just make just really nice, cool, wavy stuff. I love the plane. So what we're going to do is select plane. Again, clicking on the front, probably be the best way so you don't get too lost. You're going to click on, make sure your origin is highlighted if you happen to turn it off for whatever reason. We're going to click on the plane face right here. I believe that is the XZ plane. I'm not very good with the planes. Click on our center origin. It's very important when you're doing dual extruders to try to keep everything built off the center. It's not, you know, completely necessary because you can always align stuff later, but it's just easy while you're modeling for a specific purpose to keep everything aligned as you go. So clicking on the center, we're going to draw a basic plane around our shape. I didn't specify anything specific, just make sure it covers the entire vase area. And say OK. Actually, before we say OK, we're going to add another division in here. I believe that would be, nope, I was wrong. That's going to be in the width. So you're going to change your width faces to 4. Basically, length and width, all it does is divide the shape up. So you can play with that, put as many length and width separations as you want. But for right now, I just want 1 in the middle and 1 on the side. Say OK. Now we don't need this portion down here, so you can kind of highlight it and just hit delete on the keyboard. My computer is dragging a little bit. Okay, so now we have a basic plane right through the middle of our shape. We could stop here and split the space like that, and we'd have 1 color on each side. But something cool to do is to hit modify, and you can modify this shape. I like doing kind of twisty stuff, so you can click on the center, double click the line, and that'll select the entire line. And if you rotate kind of towards the top, you can see there's the revolve is here on the side. So we can revolve that. This looks like it's 70, somewhere around 70 degrees, something like that should be fine. So we get this cool twisty shape. Is this in your screen the whole time? Can you guys see this part? The GoToMeeting thing?
On my screen I can see everything. Yep, it looks like everyone's good.
Okay. Okay, maybe I should move that. Okay. So when we get the basic shape, we're going to hit OK. Now what's great about a plane, when you create a plane like this, it doesn't really have, at least I could be wrong, it doesn't really have a dimension to it yet because we haven't thickened it. So it's cool because when we cut this model, what is this saying? So when we cut this model, it's not really going to affect, we're not going to lose anything from a model. It's just strictly going to cut it.
Hey James, could you show the spline revolve one more time?
Sure. You know how we revolved the profile in the beginning? Is that what you're talking about?
No, just the,
the plane revolve.
This part, yeah.
Sure. Okay, this is really cool. I've done some really awesome shapes just by playing with the plane. So basically, we're going to modify. You can use modify with any of these tools that you create in the Sculpt environment. This is basically how you're going to alter the shape. So when you click modify, you can click on points. You can move those around to change the shape. You can click on the entire surface and move that stuff around. In this case, we're going to double click on the center, which is basically going to divide our shape up. And all I did was moved kind of towards the top view so I could see this little revolve tool. And we're going to click on that, and we're just going to revolve it, you know, whatever you want. 45, 50, 60 degrees should be fine. Just enough to give it that cool split shape.
Perfect. That's really awesome. Creative way to do that.
Thank you. Okay, so once we get the little split in there, we can say OK. And now we're ready to split the model. Remember I said earlier about hiding this box. We really don't need that anymore because we already have our vase set up. So just to limit the confusion, I'm going to get rid of that. It makes everything a little cleaner. All right, so now we're going to split this. To do that, it's really easy. Oh, first, I'm sorry, we have to finish the form because we're done modifying, we're done building our tool. We're going to hit finish. All right, so now we're left with this cool tool that we created that we can split this vase up with. And this tool, again, can be anything. Like, you know, there's lots of 3D parts other people make that interlock. Like, there's some cool swords where people have snap-together pieces. Basically, to make those snap-together interlocking pieces, they just built a tool with, like, you know, the triangle intersecting parts and use that to basically chop up their model, sort of in the same technique we're fixing to learn. So we're going to go to, I believe it's in Modify. You're going to select Split Body. We have Split Face, Silhouette Split, or Split Body. In this case, we're going to split the entire body. And definitely play around with the others. So the first thing it's going to ask us to do is that once the body to split, we're going to select our vase, or the model you're currently working on. And the splitting tool is the plane we created. Extend tool. This option is really good because sometimes if you had a flat plane that was really small, that only took up a small portion of this model, you could hit extend and it'll extend it all the way out, like virtually. So if you had just some small surface on here you're going to use as your cutting tool, it's still totally movable and it'll extend it all the way out past your model. So in this case you can have it on or off. It really isn't going to hurt anything, but we'll leave it on. Then we're going to hit OK. And then you're still going to see all this stuff in here, which is fine. You should now be left with 2 bodies in your drop-down. And if you go to your browser, expand the bodies menu, yours doesn't look like mine's have a bunch of extra stuff in here, which I should have thought about before teaching you guys. So basically, you should be left with something that looks like the 2 bodies over here. Okay, it should look just like this. This other split in here, there's nothing to worry about. That was because it was a mess I did earlier. Why is there another split there? So did everybody else's come out looking correctly? Anybody having issues with that? Everybody's good?
Yep, one person said they have it. Tamara says it's not an extra split, it's the Revolve seam. Awesome, thanks Tamara.
Is that, well, that's exactly what I thought too, but I got nervous. I didn't want to say anything because it looked like it was selectable, and it shouldn't be selectable. Let me see if I can go back and look at it. I was like, oh, it's just Revolve seam, nothing to worry about. I'm like, wait a minute, why is it selectable? So I don't know. Let's see if I can turn it off. Okay, she's absolutely right because I can turn it off. Thank you, Tamara. Okay, so just to prove her point, yes, I have two bodies, and I can turn them on and off. And there was my seam that was scaring me. Okay. So that is the very basic way to split a model. So we could stop everything here and call it a day and extrude or send both of these out as STLs and send them to our printer. And that's basically it. But nobody wants a boring vase. So I thought we could do some other cool stuff, like show you some other tools that will allow us to split this model up even further. So to do so, I thought we could do maybe some little patterns on the side, which could be anything. It could be any basic shape that we have available to us, or we can draw, we can project stuff, which is maybe getting a little further ahead of ourselves. But I figured the easiest way to do it for now is just to do a circle. So our goal is to make it look like this. We're going to do a circle cutout, which we can assign a different extruder to. So very easy. We'll go back to our front view just so we know where we are. Okay. So we can put any object, any tool out here that we want. So we're going to just do something simple, and we're going to drop down and select a sphere. And again, we're going to work on the same plane we've always been working on. Now for this, you can kind of draw this sphere anywhere because we're going to move it in a minute. Of course, I can't see what I'm working on. If you can't see what you're working on, you can hide the bodies over here just to see the sphere. 60 to 80 millimeters, or whatever you guys want, should be fine. Just enough to give us a nice surface area to work with. So when we create a sphere, it's basically asking us what diameter we want. We can change that down here as well. And commands like, if we're going to join, cut, intersect. Intersect is awesome. I'm going to show you guys some cool stuff to do with this later. So for right now, new body, choose a size, click OK. And we're going to move this to the side. So go ahead and select it, hit modify, and move. This is also available if you select the body and drop down to move. And then simply grab the right arrow and kind of drag it to the side a little bit. The reason we dragged it to the side is we're going to just kind of position it on the outside of the body here somewhere. Probably be easiest to go to top view, so we look straight down on the top. And what I kind of want to do is have this in between, or kind of in the center of our body. So we see the splitting line, the curve is kind of going this way. So we're going to put this somewhere over in here. And it doesn't have to be exact, because I didn't want to focus too much on making things, perfectly exact at the moment. So once you get it kind of roughly where you think a cool shape would be, you guys can move this up or down, wherever you want. It doesn't matter. Where it's in a cool spot, you can click OK. Everybody got that? Pretty easy stuff. So now we're going to put this on the other side as well. So there's a couple ways to do that. We could mirror it over there, but when I was doing this, I realized that I don't have a good mirror plane. I can see my origin down here, and if I try to mirror that, it's going to give me issues. So what I can do, something I've done in the past, is called circle pattern. So basically, let's do it this way. Let's go to Create. Once you have your shapes laid out here, go to Create. I have a lot of stuff open right now, so my computer is not liking me. We're going to create a pattern, and we're going to create a circle pattern. This is my other favorite tool that I use all the time. Now this is going to ask us to select the object, the axis, and basically what material we're working with. This path type is very important. We want to make sure, because we're wanting to select this object, that we have the body selected, not the face. Because we're not going to pattern just this face around, we're going to pattern that whole body around. So first start out by selecting the bodies, select your circle, and select the axis. The axis is going to be the center point, but we want to make sure we move our model up a little bit so we can see that blue line, and select the blue line. Do you guys see that? So basically there's the blue line in here, which is, I believe, our Z line, or Z axis. So we're going to select that blue line, and it's going to default to 3 quantity. We don't need that. Just go ahead and change it to 2. Now basically what that did was 180 degrees in a circle. It put it on this side, which in this case was exactly where we wanted it to be. So this is basically only going to work with symmetrical shapes. Then we're going to hit OK. What that did was created a pattern group. We just created these. So now we're going to have actually 3 circle shapes, which is fine because we can always hide one later. Everybody good? We got that? You can see the 3 bodies. So now we have 4 that we're working with. We have the 2 halves of our vase and the 2 spheres.
Looking good.
Awesome. Okay, so this is another cool tool I like to use all the time. This is where we're going to combine. Combine I use on every project because there's so much you can do with it. Basically, you plan ahead and you create some sort of a tool and you can combine it into your model. Use it as a cutting tool. You can combine it, join it into your tool, or you can intersect. In this case, we're going to intersect. And I can show you what that means here in a second. So to start out, we're going to go to Modify, Combine. Bear with me one second. I just want to make sure I tell you guys the right way before we go any further. Okay. So we're going to select, basically when we combine, it's going to ask us for targets and bodies, or targets and tools. And then what operation do we want to do with those targets and tools. So what's really cool about Fusion 360, and I haven't seen it in other programs I've used, and I could be wrong, so I'm sure they're out there, but just the ones in particular that I've used, is this Keep Tools feature. Keep Tools has saved my life. It saved me so much time because typically I would have to plan ahead and make copies of the tools ahead of time because I would know that I'm going to lose what I'm fixing to combine. So this is great because it allows us to keep it. The goal of this is to keep the vase. I don't want to lose my vase. So you can see Keep Tool is the vase. So in this situation, my tool is going to be the vase. My target body, which I'm going to lose, is going to be this sphere. It can be either one because we're going to do the same to the other side. So by default, it has join because it's going to say, okay, well, I think he wants to take this shape and join it to this shape, and it's going to merge them both together and get rid of all the intersecting stuff. And we don't want that. We have the option to cut. Cool feature. It'll take these shapes and just, it'll take this circle and basically cut the vase out of it. We don't want that either. We want to intersect. So when we go to intersect, we're going to hit OK. All right, so see, we lost the sphere, which is completely normal. I knew that was going to happen. But what we were left with is the part of the sphere that was touching the vase. It's another body it created, which is basically laying on top of the vase. You can see we have these conflicting shapes in here because we have 2 exact bodies laying on top of each other, which is exactly what we wanted to do. I can hide it and make it come back. So now we have the shape that we want to basically cut out of our vase. So we're going to repeat the whole procedure again, but we're going to do things a little bit differently. We're going to go to Modify. We're going to do Combine again. This time, we're going to cut this circle out of our vase, and we're going to keep it because we don't want to lose it in the process. So a little reverse this time. We're going to say our target is the vase. So I'm going to say I want this vase, and I want to cut away this tool, but please don't delete the tool. So we're going to say keep the tool. And we're going to say OK. So now there's no more conflicts. And if we hide that structure, it's gone. So now we have a hole in the vase. So that's it. This technique you can do text, you can put people's names in vases and cut them out. Lots of different ways. You can do the same thing we basically just did by drawing shapes and extruding them through there and choosing intersect. There's tons of different ways to approach this, but I basically wanted to show you guys some combine and intersect stuff. So go ahead and repeat the process for the other side. We're going to go pretty quick this time. We're going to go modify, combine. We're going to select the sphere as the tool, or as the, I'm sorry, the target is going to be the sphere this time, and the tool body is the vase. Keep the tool, and we are going to intersect. Again, the vase was the tool, sphere, target. Make sure you have intersect and keep tools. Hit OK. And now we're left with this same thing as before, the conflicting shapes on top of each other. We're going to repeat the process. If you guys are repeating tools a lot, you can easily right-click and say repeat combine. That's basically going to repeat the last thing you did. Very handy, so you don't have to keep reaching back up here. So again, that was just right-click. Go to repeat. This time a little bit different. We're going to select the vase as the target, the circle as the tool. We're going to cut it away and say we want to keep that shape. And basically we just completed the whole project. We have 4 bodies that we can send to a printer and print them out. But how are we going to export those in STLs? Lots of programs. I know people get confused with the whole browser section over here. Other programs you would just go File, Save as STL, and it would send all these to an STL, which is cool, but we're going to divide these up into 2 different colors. So from here, lots of people like to just render stuff, which is cool. And I'm going to show you basically how we're going to use render to figure out how our 3D print is going to look in dual color, because it's going to help us out later if we can assign some properties to these, so that way I don't get confused when I'm trying to make all my components over here on the side. So let me see here. So you guys, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. You have all this stuff here on the side, all these extra sketches, all these extra components that I've made. So we're going to start out real quick by discussing bodies and components, and then from there we'll go back into what I was talking about with the renders and the colors. So right now, your screen, you have bodies, and you have a bunch of bodies in here, which basically bodies are all the tools that we worked with along the way to get to our final project. All these that, usually when I'm doing a project, everything that's in this bodies menu, it's not really part of my project. These were just tools that I used along the way. As I create things, useful bodies that I know are going to be the finished product, I usually assign them into a component. And then again, as I'm creating more bodies in this section, I'll start moving those to their proper components. So components, they're important because we can have multiple bodies in a component. And then when we're done, that gives us the ability to save as an STL and export just those bodies that are in that component. A couple ways to make a component. You can either right-click on one of the bodies you're interested in and say create a component from the selected bodies, or what I like to do is just to go up to your first header in your browser. Mine's called presentation. I assume you guys have Untitled. You haven't saved it yet. You're just going to right-click up here and say new component. That's going to add a component to the bottom of your list. You can click on that and rename it. So we can call it Color 1 or Extruder 1 or whatever you guys want. And then we're going to take one of these bodies of the vase and we're just going to drag it down into that component. We can test that by turning the component on and off to make sure it's there. Awesome. So now let's do that again. Right-click on the title header and say New Component. Click on that to rename it. Call it another color, color 2. Extruder 2, color 2, whatever you guys like. Same thing, we'll drag that vase body, the other vase body, into that component. We can turn it on and off to make sure it's there. Awesome. Okay, let's not worry about these little circle pieces right now, because say this is a big project. I just sliced this up into 50 little pieces, and I have a huge list of bodies over here on the side, and it's going to be difficult for me to go through and figure out which body goes where to try to send them to a certain extruder. What we can do, just to make things a little easier, is to assign some properties to these components. Let's assign some colors in there just to make things a little bit easier. This is another great feature of components, because if we go to Modify and change the appearance, we have the ability to drag. We're going to go through and find some colors here real quick first. Probably plastic is best. I always play around in translucence just because it has ABS in there. I like to think that I'm actually assigning ABS properties. So we're going to select a cool color, and we can either drag it to the body, which is, you know, definitely an option. You can do that, or you can drag it to the component itself. This is cool because now everything I drag into that component will be assigned that color. I don't have to go through and change each individual body. So if I have a whole bunch of bodies up here, I could select a whole bunch of stuff, drag it into there, and it'll change the color for me, which is going to be handy because, let me turn that back off so I don't confuse you guys, which is going to be handy because when I select the red color here in a minute, we can easily assign these colored circles to the places they belong. So now we're going to assign a separate color. So now we're left with a 2-color vase and these 2 unassigned circles on the side. So now we can easily, you know what's even better is if you guys name these like blue and red. That way we really know what's going on. Still good? Everybody keeping up? James, I was expecting you to interrupt me way more often.
You've been doing such a good job of explaining that I don't think they have a ton of questions. They did have a few that I've addressed, but nothing that I think you need to show off. One thing I will talk about briefly though is that someone was talking about adding text onto the curved surface. So like you mentioned, you're able to do that to the vase to kind of customize it with someone's name or whatever you want on there. And their main concern was that at times when you would project it to the surface or extrude it there, you sometimes, depending on the curvature, get some skewed text, so the letters become skewed.
Yes. And we can definitely go back to that, and maybe, do you have any experience with that, James?
I do, and there isn't, as far as I know, and from the people I've worked with on it, there isn't a great solution just yet. And
we have project to surface, right?
Right.
So I know you can do the text, you can explode it, project to surface, then you can keep it uniform shape. There's like 2 options for the text. Mm-hmm. So I've had pretty good luck putting text on the surface. So we can play with that here in a second just to see.
Yeah, that would be great. I know oftentimes when it's wrapping around an entire cylinder, they can get a little bit bent, but usually you can, with a little bit of effort, you can get them to look pretty good. But go ahead, keep moving on.
Okay, definitely. So basically, what's cool about having components assign colors and properties, like I said, you can easily, if I had a whole bunch of bodies up here, which happens every time I try to do a project, there'll be literally 30 or 40 different bodies up here that I have to go through and figure out, okay, which one do I want to go to each extruder? If you hover over it, you see it highlights. So I know I want this one to be red. See how the highlighted body? So if I know that I want that to be red, I can easily just drag this into my red. And it changes to red for me. The same thing with this one. This one's highlighted. I want it to be on this extruder, so I'm going to drag it down to the blue. Quick trip into render mode, and this will just show us basically what we have. Very simple. We started out with a solid vase. We split it up into two halves, and then we just did some creative stuff to kind of add some dimension to it. I can turn each one off just to see basically what our slicer is going to see. It's going to see this as one component or one extruder, and this is our second extruder and our finished product. So pretty easy, really basic. But you can use these tools to split stuff up to do some really complex and cool shapes. So I threw together a couple in here just to show you guys. This is why my presentation is running so slow, because all these are loaded in the background. Maybe not the smartest thing to do, but we got through it.
I like it. That's awesome.
So here's just a couple quick examples of some weird vases and stuff that I made. So this one's kind of cool. All these little ridges are on the outside, and it's two different colors, or two different extruders. Let's see if I can find which one that is. Here we go. So you can see what I was talking about, all these little individual bodies that I had to click and drag into the appropriate container or component. It got kind of messy. But that's one. Okay. This other guy over here, sort of the same thing, same technique. Two different colors, two different materials. This, you guys have all, this is a user Zampic developed a vase, really popular. You see everybody who 3D prints usually tries to print this vase. I took and just did some extra stuff to it. See if I can turn off a lot of this stuff so you guys can see. Okay, so this guy turned out really cool. If I render stuff on my side, are you guys seeing it, I guess, in real time? Yeah, because there's no processing power on their end, it's all on my end.
Yep, we're seeing it.
So it still looks like it's being rendered over there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So you guys can take, we can dive into this if you'd like at the end. You can take pre-existing STLs and do some cool stuff with it. You know what, let me backtrack on that. You really can't, at this point, do, you can 3D print, you can dual color print, but in a different method. There's something called modifiers, which I can show you guys. So basically, I'm going to add all these shapes in Fusion 360, and then I can import that into my slicer and tell it to print these sections in that color. So this was done with Fusion. It was also done with a program called Autodesk 123D, which once I made the modifiers, then I went in and actually did the Boolean combined on this. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. Okay, so we covered the basics on how to do some dual color stuff. This is kind of what I was talking about with the weird shapes. These are just squares and circles, nothing fancy. And then the checker design. This was done with planes, several different planes at different angles, and just cut it up and organize each individual body into their appropriate component. Pretty cool. All right, so let's go back to where I was, because I wanted to show you some more things with components.
Before you get into that, do you have an estimation of how long it would take to print the design that we made today?
Not too long, because it was fairly small.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, the size we made it was really big. You know what? Let me go back to that, so I can show you some cool stuff we can do in that department.
Cool.
So we have our main vase. I kind of wish I would have showed you this earlier before I got too far ahead, because my timeline is huge now. Well, basically what I was going to say is when we went and changed, we designated the sizes basically of our model based on this sketch. What's great about Fusion 362 is you can go back into your timeline when it's not quite as large as mine, because I have a bunch of stuff thrown in here from organizing some other stuff. But you can go in here and make changes. Say this vase was 150 millimeters tall, which single perimeter, 150 millimeters tall, it's not going to take too long. Maybe, I want to say everything, everything in printing takes forever, so that was a lie. But yeah, it's probably going to take maybe 3 hours, I would say, 3 or 4 hours to do because it's just single perimeter. Really not that big of a deal. If we had like some of my other vases that have tons, let me go, this, actually, let me backtrack a little bit. This is the Fusion 360 gallery. I'm sure everybody here has looked at some of the models in here. Where's my vase? Okay, this vase in particular, because it was designed with so many perimeters and so many walls and so many shapes, there's a lot of surface area, so this one takes forever to print, much longer than I'd like. I think it was like 12, 15 hours, something like that. So it took a long time. So ours, the one we just designed, fairly simple, one perimeter, one wall, one surface, shouldn't take very long. That kind of answered the question, I guess.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. It's good to just have an idea of what kind of time commitment you have for that.
Yeah, it's not that bad, but everything in 3D printing nowadays takes a long time.
Right.
All right, so on that note, if the vase did take too long, you're like, man, this vase is just too long, you loaded it into your slicer, and you're like, oh, I got to go to work in 6 hours, I want it to finish. You can always shrink stuff down in here. You can change the sizes, you can manipulate it, and it'll change everything for you. Another thing, let's say you printed it and it did 3 perimeters, and you're like, well, I could definitely speed this up by making it 1 perimeter, and that way there's no infill. You can easily do that by finding where we shelled it. And you can just quickly change the shell. I say quickly. It's quick if you don't have a bunch of stuff loaded in like I do. Quickly change the shell to something else, maybe change this 1 to a 0.5 to cut the base in half. Or if you wanted to scale, say, if you wanted to print this at 50% but still maintain the 1 millimeter diameter or the 1 millimeter perimeter, you can change this to 2 perimeter or 2 millimeters and then shrink your STL down 50% in your slicer. And that way you still maintain all your settings. So Fusion's really versatile. You can go in and especially working with prototypes and stuff, you can keep everything exact the way you need it. Okay, I've completely gone off track now. So basically, I wanted to touch base a little bit on components and bodies. Very important when doing dual extruders, and just kind of important in general, especially with the setup. You want to try to keep everything in components. Components are going to enable a lot of features. When you have something in a component, then you can start dealing with assemblies. Once you guys get a little more advanced and stuff, you can move the shapes around and then snap them back into place, which is kind of cool. Maybe there's times you need to see what's going on inside a model. You can just move it, do what you got to do, revert your shapes. Bodies, you can't do that. Let's see if I have a body on here. I think I used all my body stuff already, so there's nothing there. But yeah, if you have a body, I'm trying to click it, you can't do anything with it because it's not assigned a component yet. You can actually physically click it and move it by right-clicking saying move, but that's too much work.
Quick time check, James. We have about 5 minutes left, and a number of good questions have just recently come in. Do you have a bit more to show?
There was one really important tool I wanted to get into.
Go for it.
All right. So real quick, we're not dealing with vases. You guys, everybody's bored of doing simple shapes. You want to do something cool, and you want to make like, where is my Skyrim bow? So you want to do a bow or something larger. Here it is. Okay. There's a cool tool called Edit Surface, which I think is overlooked all the time. You know what? I don't want to spend too much time trying to load up my Imgur account. So basically, if you're left with a flat, boring surface and you want to do something cool to the top of it, you can use the intersect, combine all the other stuff I just showed you, or there's a cool tool, like I said, called Edit Surface. All my friends who use Fusion 360, a lot of them kind of overlook it, and you can do some really amazing things with it. So here's here's a picture of a bow. I use Fusion 360 to sketch it all out. All I did was did basic sketches, extruded the sketches up, and then did Edit Surface to make all these cool designs. So let me show you real quick what I'm talking about, because you guys can easily 3D print some really cool stuff with just that one simple tool. All right, so I'm just going to do a basic shape real fast. Basic box. All right, cool. So you've you sketched something really neat out, and you're wanting to do something creative to this surface. In the past, I was limited to, your chamfers and your fillets, which are both amazing, cool tools, lots of features, but we want to do something cool to the surface. If we go to Modify, there's no Edit Face. This confused me in the beginning because I was like, well, where's that cool Edit Face tool? To do that, we're going to turn this into a direct model, convert to a DM feature, which basically means you're going to go into direct modeling mode. It's going to disable temporarily your history. So go ahead and convert that to direct modeling mode. And now if you double click on that feature until you see the Finish Base Feature option pop up, that lets you know that you're actually in that direct modeling mode. Now we have Edit Face available to us. Edit Face is awesome because we can click on this face, click Edit Face, and it's basically going to throw like a T-spline plane on top of the surface. We can subdivide this. We can do lots of cool stuff that we did before, how I showed you how you can revolve stuff. Let me, real quick. Just do a really cool creative shape and hit OK. And what it's going to do is take your box or whatever shape you're working with, and it's going to cut it. It's going to conform that surface to the shape of the spline that we just created. And with this technique, that's how I was able to do, the cool surface areas of the bow, and there's lots of interior artwork and stuff I've done where basically it's just trim on ceilings and stuff.
That's really awesome.
It won't take this long to load, by the way. Like I said, I have too much stuff open. Oh, nice. Real quick, I'll show you again.
Nobody saw that.
This will work out perfect. No, it's my fault because I have too many presentations open. This one will work out great, though, because I have a nice, fresh start.
While you're loading that, could you answer one last question before you show us that and we call it a day? And that would be, what advice do you have on how you would normally split up a single color component that's too large to print?
Perfect. Well, I actually have the screen open right here. So this is an example. I sketched out this, or I made the bow basically, and I needed it to fit on my 3D printer. So what I did was, in the very first exercise, we did the 200 by 200 millimeter square, the sketched out square. So I just basically hovered that around the model to figure out where my printer bed would fit best around these pieces. Mm-hmm. And then I put planes. So I put a plane here, a plane there, the same plane I showed you, only I didn't do any fancy curvature or anything to it. Just put a bunch of planes everywhere. Then went up to Modify, Split Body, selected this entire body, then selected all those planes as tools to cut these up into 200 millimeter sections. Once these were all cut up, I exported them all individually into their own component, and then exported them as STLs. So it's a really quick, easy way, simple way just to break this model up into manageable pieces. I could have got really creative, which some other people have already done on Thingiverse when I uploaded this, and made these, with little squares in them, notches or whatever, so they would conveniently fit into each other. So I think that's the simplest way to do it that way.
Perfect.
Okay, let's try that real quick again. This time it's going to work. Okay, so convert this to direct model feature. Double click on it to make sure you're actually in there. When the base model feature comes up, edit face, select the face. Do something to it. Hit OK, and there we go. So very cool. So you can sketch out people's names, you can sketch out cool designs, and then go through and do some creative, organic, surface texture. From there, you can hit Finish Base Feature, and then continue along in your project just in normal history mode. You can always go back to that too if you want. Double click on it, and you can even re-edit that surface, which will give you the ability to re-edit that face. the surface you're working with now, of course, is going to be a little more complex, but you can still go in here and do some cool stuff. All right, so that was really the only other really cool tool I wanted to show people because I think it's awesome, especially for 3D printing, because you're going to be left with a giant surface down here on the bottom to stick to your bed, so you're not going to have lifting issues, and you can still create some really organic, cool surface features.
Awesome. That's perfect, James. And we are out of time. So again, for any of you who have more questions about this, either for me or for the James who did all the work, feel free to email me or reach out to either of us on Twitter. I'm sure we'd be happy to hear from you. And yeah, let us know what you think about the webinar, as well as what questions you might have. So thanks a lot for joining, and James, thanks a lot for the awesome presentation. This was really, really good and informative.
No, thanks for having me. I think it was great. I hope
All
you
right,
guys learned
thanks a
something.
lot. We'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy.